the regulation of cryptocurrency in the Department of Justice, he had personally over $160,000 in cryptocurrency assets. He had to disclose that, and he had to send that to some other source. He sent it to his children. To lessen the regulation of an industry, which generates a $1.4 billion windfall for the President of the United States and money for the person who was...
You just heard Senate Democrats accuse Trump's own Attorney General nominee of quietly profiting from a crypto rule he changed himself. But hold on, this is only the tip of a much bigger problem. Senator Durbin says Todd Blanche refused to even sit in a room with Jeffrey Epstein's survivors, then relented only after backlash. He says Blanche personally held over $160,000 in cryptocurrency assets right before loosening the federal rules that govern it. And on top of all that, Blanche signed a single order that wipes out any tax liability for the president, his family, and his businesses forever. Days later, a federal judge would call part of this scheme something far worse than embarrassing. Is the man about to run the Justice Department already under investigation by his own bar association? Stay tuned, because what a federal judge found this week will leave you speechless.
I'll call on Senator Durbin for his opening comments.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley. Yesterday's hearing I can't easily forget in this room, because I asked a question, Mr. Todd Blanche, about the opportunity he had to meet with the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. I asked him the same question the night before in my office, and he said, I'll meet with anybody to talk about this. So I thought it was an easy question. Will you meet with those who are here today? There were 10 or 12 survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. And he said no. He wouldn't meet with them. And I asked why. I couldn't understand whether he thought they had a lawyer or needed a lawyer, but he wouldn't meet with them. It's incredible. After the hearing, I met with them. I'll never forget that meeting. You can imagine, and some of them are here today, and one will testify a little later before this panel. Try to imagine, if you will, one of these young women saying to me, Jeffrey Epstein abused me when I was 13 years old. 13 years old. Visualize in your own family a daughter, a granddaughter, 13 years of age, who is a victim of this sexual predator. Should she at least have a moment with the Attorney General to tell her story? Is that too much to ask? Apparently it was. This is what I'll tell you. I don't believe a single member of the United States Senate would vote for this nominee after meeting with these survivors. To think that he turned down the opportunity to even meet with them. He went on to say, well, President Trump signed this law which required us to disclose the Epstein file. The law was necessary because he wouldn't voluntarily disclose them. Yes, President Trump signed the law after it was discharged in the House of Representatives because we had one new person who won a special election. It was an amazing political miracle that law ever passed, but it had to pass so the American people would even have a chance of looking at these files. And now, these women and many more are willing to come forward and say, don't stop with prosecuting two people, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. There are more people you should consider. And yet, the man who would be Attorney General of the United States said he wouldn't meet with him, wouldn't listen to him. That isn't right. That is just plain wrong as far as I'm concerned. And secondly, let me tell you what. I guess I was born in a different era from this president and people around him. But I kind of understood going into public life that if you wanted to get rich, this was the wrong job. You're supposed to take this job to serve the public, make enough money to get by, but not get rich. How did the president do in the first year of his second term? $1.4 billion added to his income from the cryptocurrency group. Why is that even relevant to this conversation? Because the president opposed the cryptocurrency idea for years, switched his position, and then Mr. Flowers, or Mr. Blanche, changed the regulation, the federal regulation of cryptocurrency. The time he changed the regulation of cryptocurrency in the Department of Justice, He had personally over $160,000 in cryptocurrency assets. He had to disclose that, and he had to send that to some other source. He sent it to his children. To lessen the regulation of an industry which generates a $1.4 billion windfall for the President of the United States and money for the person who was acting Attorney General is just plain wrong. Just plain wrong. And all the excuses in the world don't make a difference. And I'll tell you, that one document that he signed, imagine, if you will, if you've ever heard of this, the President, his family, and his businesses, because of the document signed by Todd Blanche, because of that, have no liability for any tax crimes they ever committed before the date of that document. No liability, no criminal liability. Every single one of us in this room has to obey the law. That's the basics in a democracy like ours. And when it comes to tax crimes, the same applies. Now there's an exception, of course, in the eyes of Todd Blanche. And that exception is the President of the United States, his family, and his businesses. That is just plain wrong. This man should not be Attorney General.
Can I go ahead and introduce?
Durbin isn't exaggerating the stakes here. Think about what it means for the man who might run the Justice Department to have personally held crypto assets right as he loosened the very rules governing that industry. Here's the background the clip didn't give you in full. Just 2 days before this hearing, on July 13th, federal judge Kathleen Williams issued a ruling that barely made it onto cable news. She voided the exact tax settlement Durbin described, the one that erased liability for the Trump family. In her order, she didn't just call it wrong. She said Blanche's Justice Department had contrived what looked like a fake lawsuit, then dressed it up as a legitimate settlement to borrow the court's own legitimacy. She referred him for formal disciplinary sanctions. To be fair, we don't know yet whether those sanctions will actually be pursued or how far they'll go. But here's why that detail matters more than it sounds. Todd Blanche's law license doesn't come from Washington. It comes from New York. And on that same day, July 13th, the New York City Bar Association sent its own letter to this committee opposing his confirmation entirely, citing 5 separate instances where they say he violated his oath of office. 101 former judges filed a separate complaint asking the state to open a formal investigation. Here's the pattern: a promise on the record, a reality that a federal judge says looked like manufactured evidence once you look underneath it. If New York's Attorney Grievance Committee acts on this, Blanche wouldn't just lose this nomination. He'd lose the ability to practice law anywhere in the country and become only the second sitting U.S. Attorney General in American history to be disbarred.
That's pretty good evidence. And
Yeah, I didn't mean you.
time,
I meant your line prosecutors.
At that time, I decided that I needed to be more careful about my remarks.
Yeah, no,
And
my
so
question.
my remarks were safeguarded and carefully made.
Yeah.
And frankly, I might add more carefully made than the remarks of some of the judicial officers who have been, who while very concerned about the Justice Department, seem to be willing to themselves engage in political considerations, which I didn't think were appropriate for the judiciary. So maybe there's a problem that's broader than we would otherwise recognize.
Well, you've changed the topic a little bit to your own comments and the response to that, which is fine. I appreciate that you've said that. But my question had to do with when criticisms like that are leveled against department lawyers, there is ordinarily some kind of a process or review that takes place.
Durbin isn't the only one with doubts. Republican Senator Tom Tillis, who isn't running for re-election and has nothing left to lose, said he wasn't ready to vote yes either. His condition was simple. Blanche had to sit down with Epstein's survivors first. That meeting happened later that same day at Justice Department headquarters. According to survivors who described it afterward, Blanche was evasive, pointing to the FBI as the ones with investigative power, not him. So now Blanche is dealing with 2 separate fronts at once: a Democrat accusing him of personal financial conflicts of interest, and a Republican who still hasn't said yes because of how he's treated crime victims. And there's a hard deadline attached to all of it: A Senate Judiciary source says the committee vote on this nomination is set for July 30th. Republicans hold this committee by the thinnest possible margin. If Tillis or fellow holdout John Cornyn votes no, this nomination never reaches the Senate floor at all. And by the time that vote happens, we may also know whether New York moves forward on stripping Blanche of his law license altogether. Step back and look at the full picture. A senator says Blanche personally profited from a rule he changed himself. A federal judge says his own Justice Department manufactured a fake lawsuit to protect the president's family from taxes. And the Bar Association that licenses him to practice law at all says he's already violated his oath 5 times over. So we'll ask you directly, do you believe an attorney general should be confirmed while a federal judge has referred him for disciplinary sanctions and his own state bar is asking senators to vote no? Drop your take in the comments. Hit subscribe if you want us tracking what happens when this committee votes on July 30th, because by then we may also know whether Todd Blanche keeps his law license at all, because this story is far from over.